morning, folks. If you can kind of get settled, I think we're confirming that a couple of board members are online, and then we'll get started. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the February 19th 911 Advisory Board meeting. I'm Chair Lisa Monget, and I'd like to introduce myself. I'm the Chief Deputy Director of California's Governor's Office of Emergency Services. You may know us as Cal OES. Nested within our agency are the men and women in these critical programs here in the Public Safety Communications Division. I'm also at the same time recently appointed as the acting deputy director. It's a newly established governor appointee position, which really elevates the executive sponsorship of the Public Safety Communications Division and all of the programs nested under that division. So with that, as a matter of housekeeping, I think I'd shared that we're going to do roll call. Then we're going to go to a closed session, and then we will return to you and we will move through the remainder of the agenda. With that.
Thank you. We'll establish quorum. Assistant Commissioner Ellison, California Highway Patrol, are you online? Dispatch Manager Wallace?
Here.
Chief White?
Present.
Sheriff Sanchez?
Present.
Sheriff Johnson?
Present.
Deputy Director Sidney?
Present.
IT Analyst Chase?
Present.
Chief Huff?
Present.
Chief Ramirez? We have a quorum.
Thank you, Paul. And with that, I believe I'm looking to council. I believe we move into closed session.
Yeah, crippled the minutes. I apologize.
So I look for a motion to approve the minutes, please.
I'll motion.
I move to approve the minutes.
A second from Mr. Chase. Thank you. And then a roll call. Assistant Commissioner Ellison? Still not online. Dispatch Manager Wallace? Chief White?
Approved.
Sheriff Johnson? Deputy Director Sidney?
Approved.
Chief Huff?
Approved.
Chief Ramirez?
Approved.
Unanimous vote with a motion and a second.
All right, with that, I believe we'll move into closed session. And when we return, we will move through the remainder of the agenda. Thank you.
The I'm sorry, Assistant Commissioner Ellison, I heard that you have joined online. For those online, can you hear me in the room?
Yep.
All right, sir. Thank you. For the record, Assistant Commissioner Ellison from CHP has joined the meeting, so we'll reflect that in the minutes.
So next on our agenda is the update of the 911 branch programs. And before I turn it over to our branch chief, Paul Truxell, I really wanted to provide an update, particularly with regards to the NG 911 project. Now, for those of you that are not that close to this, Cal OES is responsible for the maintenance and the implementation of the Next Gen 911 project. An implementation, we do that through a network of vendors and contractual arrangements and support of the PSAPs, the public service, the public safety answering points. Now, at the last meeting on November 20th, we had shared with you and the public that we were pausing the rollout of this new technology to additional PSAPs. I want to be very clear. That does not mean that we are not prioritizing the support of the existing PSAPs where this new technology is employed. So that continues to be a priority with us and our vendors. The other thing I want to share about this pause gives us a good opportunity to really do a review of the technology, particularly with regards to the PSAPs that currently are implementing this technology. And when I say that we need to do a review, it's not just from the technical piece of it, not just the equipment and the network, but also the business side of it. What is the lived experience of the 911 call centers and the PSAPs that have deployed this technology? So that will all be part of our review. That review is going to inform how we move forward with the project. But make no mistake, implementation of this technology continues to be a priority to Cal OES and the administration. You know, the legacy 911 system has been in place for decades, and I know all of you know that, and it has served us well. But really, we're looking for the kind of technology that Californians deserve, that provide the types of features that Californians technologically are accustomed to having. And so we continue to focus on that project. To that end, I want to share also, we have brought in an outside expert. We've brought in a consultant who has vast experience, primarily with large state technology projects. Previously, he served as the Chief Deputy Director of the California Department of Technology. That's the control agency in the state that oversees large technology projects. Also has some experience in call centers from his past life. And so you will be meeting him at future advisory board meetings. He will be joining us as we visit each of the PSAPs and get to understand kind of what the lived experience is at the PSAPs, and along with our engineers and thinking through and working very closely with our partners, our vendors, to make sure that we understand kind of what the technology, how it's working, and making sure everyone's comfortable with it. We've already started the review. We expect to have that completed in the spring and to be able to talk about what a go-forward framework looks like. To that end, you're going to see we're really having some robust conversations about what does our presentations look like to you in this body. And to that end, you're likely going to see kind of a change as we go forward and we do these presentations for you folks, and making sure that we're providing technical information, but in a way that's meaningful and provides everybody a sense of what the actual impacts are to the PSAPs and the projects across the state. So with that, I'm going to ask the board to consider making a motion to establish a subcommittee. So I want to talk a little bit about what a subcommittee is. Under Bagley-Keene, you can establish a subcommittee of 2 individuals, and the benefit of that, it will allow us at Cal OES to engage and have members be more available in real time as we have opportunities to perhaps update the subcommittee or the subcommittee to even share information with us. So with that, unless Chief Counsel wants to share anything on that, I would ask for a motion from this body to consider whether you'd like to establish a subcommittee, and if so, nominations of 2 individuals that would serve on this subcommittee.
Yes, and so I think the first motion is to establish the subcommittee, and then if established, then we can entertain nominations as to who would serve, and then vote on those nominations.
Thank you. With that, I'll hand it over to the members.
I'll move to establish a subcommittee.
Okay, we'll conduct a roll call vote on the motion to establish the subcommittee. Assistant Commissioner Ellison online. Dispatch Manager Wallace.
Approve.
Chief White.
Approve.
Sheriff Sanchez.
Approve.
Sheriff Johnson.
Approve.
Deputy Director Sidney.
Approve.
IT Analyst Chase.
Approve.
Chief Huff.
Approve.
Chief Ramirez.
Approve.
Unanimous vote.
Great, thank you. And with that, I will have nominations for 2 board members to serve and a vote to support those 2 nominations.
Just a point of clarification, are we gonna, as the nominations of individuals, are we gonna pause, vote on that particular, or are we voting on both together at the same time?
I think what we could do is vote on each one, maybe make it a little cleaner.
Yeah, with that, I think it's really important to have somebody with the PSAP experience, dispatch experience. So with that, I would like to nominate Mark Chase as a representative of that subcommittee, if he's so willing.
I second. Move to second.
Okay, we've heard a second. So the motion to approve Mark Chase for the subcommittee. Assistant Commissioner Ellison online. Dispatch Manager Kurt Wallace.
Approve.
Chief White.
Approve.
Sheriff Sanchez.
Approve.
Sheriff Johnson.
Approve.
Deputy Director Sidney. Chief Huff.
Approve.
And Chief Ramirez.
Approve.
Unanimous. Mark Chase is voted to subcommittee.
All right, a second nominee.
I'd like to nominate Chief White.
I'll second that.
And I assume you would accept.
I'll accept for the remainder of my term, which ends this year, end of the calendar year.
Okay, this roll call vote to confirm Chief White for the subcommittee. Assistant Commissioner Ellison online. Dispatch Manager Wallace.
Approve.
Sheriff Sanchez.
Approve.
Sheriff Johnson.
Approve.
Deputy Director Sidney.
Approve.
IT Analyst Chase.
Approve.
Chief Huff.
Approve.
Chief Ramirez.
Approve.
Unanimous vote for Chief White to be on the subcommittee.
Thank you. With that action, we've established a subcommittee for the advisory board. So thank you for that. And with that, I'll move to Mr. Paul Truxell, who will provide an update on the 911 branch programs.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Paul Troxel. I'm the 911 branch manager. I appreciate everybody's attendance today. And I really wanted to kind of hone in on the responsibility of the 911 branch team right now. As we speak to this project and existing 911 services in support of the PSAPs. As the branch manager, I'm responsible to ensure my team is prepared to support the PSAPs, the delivery and the routing of all 911 calls and the answering of all 911 calls. And I need to make sure my team has the appropriate tools and resources, and they're doing their daily monitoring of the network, of the call processing equipment, which that includes monitoring of the trouble tickets and communicating with the PSAPs. And what we have done currently, we have enhanced our 911 outage duty officer. We've always had a 911 duty officer that has taken the 911 outage information to support the 23 PSAPs that are currently live on the Next Gen 911 network. We have created an additional duty officer, and then we have an engineer who's on call to support that duty officer. So in the event of an outage reported by the PSAP or vendor self-reporting an outage, that call goes to this duty officer. They engage the engineering team immediately. They start to troubleshoot exactly what's happening, and then they get the vendors involved through the troubleshooting and resolution of that particular outage. The other role that we've taken is anytime that we have some sort of network update, regardless if it's NG911 network or for call processing, when we have an update, we want our team out there at the PSAP experiencing what that PSAP team is experiencing. And I'm very fortunate, a couple of members of the 911 branch team came from the PSAP. They were dispatchers, dispatch management, and they have that real life experience of what should be happening at that call taker's position when the 911 call hits. So we're embedding that team with our engineering team to be able to see what is happening and then give feedback to the vendor. It's viewing, it's performing as designed, or we need this additional tweak. So that has been very successful for us over the last couple of months. And that is really our main focus. And we're also continuing to support those PSAPs who are on the legacy 911 network. We continue to monitor those outages. Anytime there's a specific disruption at that PSAP, we're meeting with them, trying to determine exactly what happened so we can get our vendors involved, whether it's network vendor or the call processing equipment vendor involved to get that resolution. So I think that's very important. As we continue to evaluate our next step forward, the team is very busy in the background doing this monitoring and really collecting the information about what's happening in legacy, what's happening in the next gen network, and what's happening with call processing that will help impact our next decision and our next steps forward. And that's the type of information that we'll be collecting and then coming back to report back to the board, especially as any disruption to service, if it's service impacting. What service was impacted? How did we respond? How did the center respond? And then how the vendors sought resolution and took steps to keep this from happening again in the network. So I'll pause real quick for any questions from the board.
Well, how is this getting communicated to the dispatch centers and the dispatch groups themselves?
So the team has been meeting with the 23 PSAPs that are currently live. We've had a lot of communication. We've met with the Tuolumne team, the Imperial County PSAPs last week. The team is heading down. Actually, they're driving to Kern County today to meet with them. We have other meetings scheduled to physically meet with them. We've done a lot of telephone calls and a lot of remote conversations just to prep them and understand they have a point of contact within the branch that they can work with. And then as we go out, we've got CalNina coming up, the big conference here in a couple of weeks. This will be a part of our presentation that we do, what the branch team is doing to support those PSAPs, regardless of what technology is delivering your 911 call. We want to make sure that the PSAPs understand that we're here and we're ready to support them with everything they need.
And how does that affect the agencies that are not yet on next gen, but are about ready to go there as far as a transitional piece? Some of them that are neither, they got one foot in both the legacy and the next gen.
Yeah, so those are the ones that we really are trying to communicate a little bit more with, because there's still some confusion. Am I next gen? Am I not? I know we have some agencies updating their call processing equipment, and in the contract we called it next gen 911 call processing, but it's not really next gen 911. Next gen is the delivery of the call. It's the network. The call processing equipment, that's the system that you use to answer the phone. And in some of these PSAPs, they're going to be using legacy technology to deliver 911, and they'll just have updated technology to answer the call. So to your specific point, that's a lot of Janae, our advisory and compliance supervisor, her and her team are doing outreach to those PSAPs and really communicating where they are in this transition.
I had a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Going forward, can all PSAPs, as the project progresses, and I realize there's decisions to be made, but is that something that we can count on going forward? Is that side-by-side support to ensure more successful deployment?
Yes, something that when our project first started, we did a series of town hall outreach meetings, and then we did some online virtual meetings during COVID. And that's something that we've talked about restarting. Communication is going to be very important. And we've got our Calnina conference coming up. I know we'll have a large audience there to hear that continued message, but afterwards I think to your point, Chief, we need to keep communication going. So we are always willing to join the local PSAP manager meetings as they're facilitated. We always have a team member ready and available to go to those. Or if somebody wants to set up a special meeting with us, and then we're looking at how can we schedule just regular meetings, at least virtual. And then as people are available to join, they can join and get these touch points.
Thank you. And just a comment going forward is to the extent that this board can support making sure that you have the right resources, staffing, and funding. I know we sort of usually on the back end get told, hey, this change proposal was sent in, but I know for myself, I would definitely support whatever resources you need. I know that your branch has been stretched with staffing, but I think one clear message that we've all heard is having that side-by-side support is going to be critical. So just let us know how we can support you in doing that.
Yeah. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. So our next slide here, I've embedded our 911 call statistics for 2024. Our team, we monitor all of the 911 statistics as they come in, and then we break them down into wireless, wireline, voice over IP, and other, which includes telematics. And that's the technology installed in the automobile, like OnStar, crash notification, and then text to 911. And in 2024, we saw just over 25 million 911 calls, and remaining consistent, 87% of that 911 workload is coming from a wireless device. Wireline has declined by 1%, just over 1 million wireline calls. We've seen a consistent decline in that workload, and we'll probably continue to see a decline up to a certain point. I think there's some communities probably for some time who won't be able to go to any other technology until more infrastructure is built out, either to support voice over IP or wireless. Then our VoIP, we've seen a pretty consistent data in the VoIP calls, and then our telematics, a little bit of uptick there. And then ultimately text to 911, still an important means of communication. We did see an uptick there, We still try to emphasize call if you can, text if you can't. Text is still a best effort delivery and can sometimes take a bit to get response back and forth. So we always ask, call if you can, text if you can't. And I know Janae from our PSAP advisory and compliance unit, her and her team, when they're meeting with all of the PSAPs, they're talking about text to 911 delivery and making sure the PSAPs have everything they need to answer those calls, whether they're integrated with the call handling or if it's an over-the-top solution for delivery of that text. So I'll pause. Any questions or comments from the board related to the 911 statistics for 2024? Okay. When we deployed our next gen 911 network, the branch saw a very specific need to make sure that we had a cybersecurity vendor on contract. We had a contract in place. That contract expired at the end of last year. The 911 branch team worked with our partners at the California Department of Technology, who helps procure 911 related service for the state. We refreshed that contract and we got a new vendor on contract at the end of the year. That's 911 Authority. They're providing cybersecurity analysis of the NG 911 network, the 911 call processing equipment, and 988. We've added those other two components because they are all interlinked together, and the updated technologies do introduce cybersecurity risks, and we want to make sure our vendors are providing the appropriate security. We're getting them tested and validated, and through that transition of vendors, Cal OES sent a letter to all of our next gen 911 vendors introducing the new vendor, introducing that contract and their requirements, just to make sure that when the new team started their outreach and their assessments, the vendors knew that it was a trusted resource and an appropriate representative of Cal OES. And then the OES team, we've got our project team and then our engineering team. We meet with that group of vendors on a regular basis. We talk about their assessment, the work that they're doing. Our engineering team is working through an assessment ourselves to go through lab assessment as well. So we'll have certification, cybersecurity certification through our lab. We're putting a lot of effort here and really focusing on protecting California from any cybersecurity threat, getting the best posture that we possibly can. And as we continue down this path and assessments and reports are made available, we'll make sure to come back and share that with the board as appropriate, likely in the closed session discussion as it relates to security.
A question on the funding for that. Is the portion for 988, are they paying their share or is it all coming from CNEF funding?
So it is broken up between 911 and 988 funding. The team has done a quick formula, so they are equal pay share.
Thank you for clarifying.
All right. So the other update I had was a contract amendment that we're working through with our cloud CPE, our cloud call processing equipment contract. That current contract, the only technology available is technology that's either in a data center or available through cloud sources. We would identify the easiest way to identify different technology is what we have currently in the PSAP on-premise, that telephone equipment that sits in your back room today. So what we've done is we've worked with the California Department of Technology to start the amendment process to add on-premise equipment into that cloud CPE contract. And we're currently, the vendors are currently delivering and installing equipment into our lab. It will be tested, it will be validated, and it will be NENA I3 compliant, and it will be capable of supporting next gen 911 when that rollout happens at that PSAP who purchases that equipment. The testing, we're hoping to start here within the next couple of weeks, and the contract amendment, we're targeting by the end of March, we'll have that amendment completed and fully executed. And the vendors, provided all the testing and everything is successful and the vendors get certified, we'll go into contract execution. As soon as that's done, they'll be available to sell at the PSAPs. So we'll continue to update as we get progress through all of that work that the team is doing in the lab. And additionally, one of the other steps that we're taking with our lab, we've outgrown the physical lab that we have currently. So we have a little corner down here in the first floor of this facility where we're adding additional workstations to continue to build out our lab capability. And we expect that to be done about midsummer. So as soon as that's done, we'll make it available for the board members and any respective PSAP folks who want to come out and visit the lab and see that technology. And that lab will include 911 call processing equipment, 911 network, the delivery, legacy, the best that we can replicate legacy call delivery, and 988, is we're going to have 988 call handling solutions in there as well.
Mr. Truxell, just a point of clarification, just to make sure, and edit me as needed. So going back to the contract amendment, is another way to say that essentially under the current contractual arrangement for PSAPs to secure equipment, they work with the vendors that have been selected. Those vendors, the equipment is all cloud-based. This contract amendment will expand the suite of options for the PSAP so that if they choose so, they can choose equipment that is not cloud-based. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay.
And just to clarify additional on that, cloud will remain on contract and remain available for those agencies who want to go to that technology. We're just adding additional equipment.
Question. So is the branch considering a hybrid solution? Because I feel, at least from the PSAP side, a lot of the, I don't want to say lack of confidence, but nervousness about a cloud solution might be rectified by a hybrid solution where, right, there's still the ability to fail over to copper or fail over to some other technology.
I think we'd have to work with our engineers to see if that's possible and how we would write that requirement.
Yeah, I'd highly recommend it because I feel like there are some solutions that are on the current contract that are attractive, but having that availability to fail over to copper, I think would give people that confidence and encourage them to go to a newer solution versus reverting back to a legacy solution. Well, changes are made and as we move forward.
Yeah, again, we can work with Ryan and his team to make sure that we're understanding exactly what your ask is. I believe in the on-premise with legacy 911 call delivery, I believe that it exists in that technology. We would just have to examine if it could exist in the cloud technology. And I can't speak to that right now.
I have a couple questions on the amendment. Is it accurate that under the current contract for the legacy CPE that they were required to comply with I3, but in fact they haven't all complied?
So to my knowledge, all of the vendors that are currently on contract complied with the I3 requirement.
The legacy on-prem system?
Oh,
That's what I'm referring to.
so the legacy on-prem equipment from previous contracts had the requirement in the contract. However, we didn't have a way to validate that. We didn't have a lab at that time. Since we've built the lab, that was the work that we did in 2019, 2020, validating the current systems. Since then, the vendors have done updates. They've pushed new versions that is that meets I3 requirements to deliver next-gen calls. The equipment that we're evaluating now in the lab will have more strict testing.
Thank you for clarifying that. And I think that's one of my concerns, is to make sure that as we sort of embark on this maybe parallel road or whatever you want to call it, that mechanism of holding accountable is there, so that we don't end up, sort of repeating mistakes of the past. I know from, updates that I've received through the board over the last few years is it was a challenge getting those providers, and now they're going to be back on stage again. I think the other point to follow up on what Mr. Chase was getting at is to ensure that if they are allowed to sell on-prem solutions, that we're providing a similar level of redundancy that would exist by having a cloud-based solution, so that we don't end up with a patchwork throughout the state of different levels of resiliency. That was one of the reasons why we looked for cloud-based solutions, was to provide that additional level of resiliency versus having, a physical server on-prem. And to his point, not that it can't be done. I think there are things, but I would say that we should prioritize that. The other part is that I want to make sure that this does not impact in any way the support of the already deployed CPE equipment, and core network equipment in terms of like patching and stuff, because this will take resources from the lab, which we know already is limited. So to whatever extent that this board needs to do something, or maybe just stating that we make sure that there is a tier of priority, that if you're faced with a patch that impacts an existing city or county, and you have a vendor ready for the next step, this one should take the priority. And I know the chief deputy director has made clear sort of offline, but I want to repeat on the record that we are prioritizing things. We're making sure that, to the extent that there's service degradations, that those are handled as emergencies or appropriately prioritized.
That's a very good point. And I will say our team does evaluate that. Anything live in the existing environment, we're going to prioritize. Lab testing is not impacting service delivery. Lab testing for a new vendor, not able to sell, not able to deliver that technology, would be secondary to the service delivery and the impacts on 911, whether it's an impact to the caller or impact to the PSAP receiving those calls.
Thank you.
Paul, and I apologize, you might have said it and you might have just clarified it. I just want to make sure I heard it correctly. So the lab, because of the more stringent requirements, is really going to require new vendors to go through the lab, but not existing vendors. But did I hear that correctly?
So we're going to call it legacy
Yes.
legacy technology vendors. We did not have a lab requirement in that contract. So we have them to validate NG911 service delivery, but not the performance of their call handling technology. Under the old contract, all new contracts, we are putting a lab requirement to run through the lab, so everybody will be tested for new technologies.
Even if that vendor, to make sure existing vendors are meeting this more strict requirement.
Yes,
Yeah, thank you.
yes.
I wanted to ask something to follow up on Mr. Chase's recommendation for more of a hybrid, which makes a lot of sense. It sounds like to me what you're saying, Paul, is that when we're moving into the next gen 911, perhaps it's a bridge too far or a leap too far, based on the support that may be available and the problems that are being experienced with the next gen. So the on-prem makes some sense in order to be able to do that. So I get that piece, but also I'm wondering from a fiscal accountability and how are they going to pay for this when they're looking at this next gen that is already a piece that is going to take them on quite a bit of leap financially. How do they now integrate this other piece only to later go into the next gen? How do we help them with that support?
You're talking about the impact to the PSAP?
That's right.
So all of this equipment, the network, the routing, delivery, and answering of 911 is funded through SETNA, funded from Cal OES. So we have a team, they work with the PSAP when they're ready to upgrade their technology. They work through with the PSAP on what their funding allotment's going to be and get that authorization to them so they can purchase that equipment. Then the invoices get sent to us. The PSAP should not be out of pocket for any next gen 911 equipment or any call processing equipment based on our formula. Now, a PSAP might want to buy extra positions. That's PSAP preference, and they may have to use local money, but the funding model supports that 911 workload at that PSAP.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I just one follow-up to clarify, have the requirements already been set or you're working on the requirements?
So the requirements for the amendment.
The amendment.
Have been set. Right now, the vendors are bringing their technology in and getting it ready to test. As a part of this contract, we're not working all the way through contract execution until they've been validated in the lab. Once they pass the lab, then we'll work through the rest of that bid response and work with CDT to execute the contract. So only those vendors who have successfully tested in the lab will be able to execute a contract.
So to my point earlier about the resiliency and looking that this all is investment of taxpayer money under the contract that would be amended, I don't think they're required to have, for example, like 2 servers, right? They can have a single call handling server at a dispatch center under the old contract, which is being amended. So conceivably, we could be paying for a new install at PSAP X that has 1 server that when that goes down, they go offline. Is that accurate?
I'd have to review the contract to see exactly what was written for that requirement. It was my experience that the rack of equipment had redundant systems built into it, but I'm not prepared to answer. I want to see exactly what's written in those contract requirements to answer your specific question.
So from an advisory perspective, and I'm not sure the mechanism for this, but it's difficult from the board because if it's already being done, then how do we say, here's what our thoughts are? Because my thought would be is, okay, if you're going to go the route of selling the on-prem, then we need to make sure that that is in there. So I don't know if now's from the legal side, if we can make a motion to do that from an advisory perspective, but I'm willing to make a motion to say that that needs to be in there because it would seem foolish to spend more money on, this sort of fix. And to the chief's point, like we need to move things forward, not backwards. Right. And I understand the basis, but
right. So I've got a note based on where we are in the contracting process. I think it would be fully advisable by CDT that we could add this requirement. As again, the contract has not been executed yet. They're still going through this testing. So I've got a note. Let me work with the engineering team, make sure that we can answer this, and then we can respond to the board.
thank you.
Yeah, no, and along those lines, we'll be working with them in tandem to ensure, see what options are available.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chief. All right, that concludes my 911 branch update.
If there's no more questions or comments from the members, I'm going to open it up for public comment. And then just as a reminder for everyone, as set forth in the meeting notice, public comments will typically be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Speakers are to limit their comments to the subject of discussion. All remarks shall be addressed to the State 911 Advisory Board members as a body. Any questions posed to the State 911 Advisory Board members may be answered after the meeting or during a future meeting. Although not required, speakers are requested to identify themselves by stating their name and city of residence. With that, anyone that has public comment, you're welcome.
Good morning, members of the board. Can everybody hear me okay? Excellent, thank you. This is Alicia Fuller with the California Highway Patrol. I'd like to inquire about the discussion on the lab expansion that you spoke of, Paul. So first, I'd like to thank Cal OES for implementing a lab in your facility so that equipment could be thoroughly tested and ensure that it works for the needs of California. As you work to expand the lab, can you talk a little bit more about its interaction with the PSAP community and how we can leverage that lab for the PSAP community to ensure that their needs are met with regard to what is in the contracts?
Yes. So if I've understood your question, when we do the lab expansion, we'll have all of that technology installed. We've always told the PSAPs that they're welcome to join our lab. They're welcome to come in we'll make an engineer available. We have team members who are familiar with the equipment in there. They can come in, they can see the equipment. We can give them the login. They can do test calls on the equipment. The benefit is they're in a controlled environment where they can test, they can see the equipment. Now it is a lab, so the full PSAP experience cannot be replicated. Every PSAP is a little different. The configuration in the back room, the types of lines that come in, the drop lines. Mr. Chase, I think you articulated you can have some 50-year-old telephone technology line to a volunteer resource still coming into your PSAP. That we can't replicate. But what we do ask, and especially with the CHP team, your team has been great helping to test and give their dispatch experience testing. So we open that up for them and any PSAP who wants to come in and see the equipment, especially if you're looking at different technologies. If you're looking at telephone system A and telephone system B, your dispatchers can come in and log in and do test calls and see how they work. You can work with the vendors that support that, and they can do their demos in the lab when the lab is available. I do want to say it would be based on priority. But the main focus of the lab is to validate our technology. The secondary purpose is to give dispatchers a place to come and see future technologies and how they work and help demystify what's really going to happen when that next gen call comes in. It really isn't different. It just appears different in a different spot on the call processing equipment, so they can see how that interacts. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much. Quick follow-up question. For somebody who would like to schedule lab time, or if there's a critical technology that is not incorporated in the lab that would be beneficial to the state to incorporate into the lab, audio logging, for example, how would those requests be made?
I would say reach out to Ian Stevenson. He's our senior engineer. He's in charge of our lab. He can take that request, and then we can evaluate as a team what that additional technology request would be.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Any other members? The public comment? All right. Hearing none, we can move on to the next item. The next item, Mr. Truxell, the staffing and retention study review, please.
Sorry, Chair, I had one follow-up on the last item. On the website, we have the transparency portal with the contracts and such. Since there's a lot going on right now, can we make sure that everything is posted on there related to the contracts? For example, in the current contracts, there's references to a project deployment plan, which relates to the payment milestones, and that it's referenced in the contract, but it's not attached. In the interest of maintaining and building public trust, it would be very important, I think, to put those documents on there so that it can be easily accessed. And that way, if anybody has any questions, they can read through on their own without doing Public Records Act requests. Thank you.
We can certainly do that. Appreciate the comment.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, item 5 is the staffing and retention study review. The request of the 911 Advisory Board members will be to discuss the staffing and retention study. I believe all members had the study delivered to them. Is there any conversation, any discussion from the board members?
Are you going to give an overview of the staffing?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that. So a couple of years ago, in a long-range planning committee meeting, members of the planning committee were having a discussion about staffing and the challenges in trying to hire, retain, train staff in the PSAPs. The OES team started in on that conversation, and the long-range planning committee members asked, well, what can be done? And so we as a team came back and said, well, what we could do is do a study. What are the challenges for hiring, retaining, training PSAP dispatchers? What's happening in the state? And in that survey that was done, start to collect best practices. What are the positive things happening? What are the things that could be potentially impacting dispatchers leaving? In the study was done in 2 surveys. One was a management survey to take a look at, from the management perspective, what was put in place to manage the PSAP, the pay, the benefits, the hours, the scheduling, work requirements, hiring requirements, things like that. And then the dispatch line level study, actually collecting data from the dispatcher specific about their PSAP environment, the things that worked well for them, the things that didn't work well for them. And it also collected information about health and wellness and the stressors that the dispatchers are walking into the center with even before they log in to do their jobs. So it was a very in-depth, very comprehensive study. That study was drafted, given to the long-range planning committee members who reviewed the study. They gave some feedback to the vendor who went back. The vendor who completed the study, they did some edits. All of that was ran through the long-range planning committee at the fall meeting in 2024. And this is the final drafted product of all of that work and the findings from that study. It's all been framed up. The idea here is to give PSAP management a tool to be able to review. If they did not complete the study, they can take a look at the data points for that study, and they can start to evaluate maybe some of the concepts that they can bring into their PSAP. And those who did partake in the study can maybe do some self-reflection. How can they improve, or how can they help share what good things are happening in their center? So that's the nexus behind this study. And the intention here is to make this, once it's approved, we want to distribute this to all of our PSAPs around the state. And then we did put a requirement in there. So in a couple of years, we can commission another study to come in and evaluate if PSAPs use this study to affect change. How can we go evaluate to see what was really successful and just kind of continue to hone in on this? We didn't want to just create a study to sit on a shelf and collect dust. We wanted to find a way to try to make actionable data for the PSAPs to help improve staffing and retention, because it is a challenge.
And one of the things that I heard you say is change, is how are they going to affect change within the dispatch systems? And I think the study is excellent. My concern is that it will be put on a shelf, and the information that's contained here isn't actually implemented. What oversight or leverage do we have to make sure that some of this is actually effectuated within the dispatch systems themselves, within each and every dispatch, that they're given the support and the tools they need to accomplish some of these changes? One of the things that we see key in the study is that management is one of the top things that dispatchers and the dispatch systems are concerned about. So if they're the gatekeepers, how do we get past that?
So the way I look at that is sharing it with the board. We can then get contacts for your professional associations that you represent, and we can share it with them, the fire chiefs, the sheriffs, the police chiefs, CalNENA and APCO. We can share it across that leadership component, especially for the sheriffs, fire chiefs, and police chiefs, because you're the executive overseeing all of the PSAPs. So I think getting the information into the right hands, not allowing the gatekeeper to stop that, but also, like when we go to CalNENA, we'll talk about this study. So we get line level leaders who grab it. And we all know in our PSAPs, we have young leaders who want to affect change, And this may be a tool that helps give them a voice and maybe helps further that conversation. I'm not aware of any specific authority the 911 branch has other than continuing to advertise that this study is available and continuing to help the PSAPs understand if they're having trouble hiring, staffing, and retaining. We have tools and resources, especially in post. We have a relationship with the dispatch post manager there who manages all the dispatch training. It's another resource that we can get involved in this conversation. Again, just to help educate the PSAP and hopefully break through that gatekeeper.
Yeah, if I may, I would follow up even more so on your comment about presenting to CalNINA. I actually think it would be very beneficial to present to all the associations, especially the sheriffs at an annual conference that they have. Cal Chiefs has the same thing, whatever it may be, so the executives can actually see that presentation. Because especially when you get into the challenges of recruiting, retaining, and especially with the impact of the overall wellness, dispatchers, I would say historically, are forgotten sometimes when it comes to that. And I think it's important for the leaders to see how they can convey the importance of making that an operational priority to make sure they have access to the training and resources they need so we can retain them.
It's a great recommendation. We'd be more than happy to come out and meet with all of the professional associations and do a presentation and make sure that this study is available, and some high level points are provided during that presentation.
Is the state able to provide any support in tangible pieces like facilitated discussions for somebody who could actually go out to some of these agencies who may not have the wherewithal within particularly some smaller agencies to think kind of what are some things that we maybe haven't employed in the past that we could we use retired annuitants or other part-time personnel to help some of these staffing shortages? How are we going to overcome that tightening of the purse strings? You know, what is the state able to do to offset or share some of those costs? How are we working on the mental health aspect and changing maybe of work hours or things that have been really traditional in some of these agencies that maybe they need to think how some other agencies have gotten creative on solving some of these solutions? So that's sharing, which I know CalNINA is probably doing and a lot of this, but not everybody can go to CalNINA because they are so strapped in some of these smaller agencies. They can barely fill their shifts, much less get out and do a conference. So are we taking the show on the road to them?
So I've taken that as an action item. I don't think that we've discussed that specific point as a team, but I'd be very interested to work with our Post counterpart. Post has a lot of other training resources and training classes and vendors who teach some of these components, and we might be able to partner in an education campaign to be able to get out there and facilitate this discussion. So let me do some research and report back to the board on how we can further help educate and facilitate discussion at the local level.
Thank you.
And then Paul, you know, I agree with the education campaign part of it. The retention in the study was a very good study. Me working in 3 dispatch centers throughout my career, it was very informative, but only 50% of the dispatch centers responded to the study. So if they're not coming to CalNINA, they do need to be educated because you have to try something new. Centers cannot continue to recruit the way they recruited almost 30 years ago when I started. So it is helpful, especially when you reach the mental health issue. You know, the dispatch centers are 365 days, 24/7. You know, holidays, weekends, your birthdays doesn't exist when you're in dispatch center. So it is a very hard to fill position. So the study is very useful, but we do really need to work on pushing it out to those smaller centers who don't have the capability or the ability to send anyone out to CalNINA.
Yeah, very good points. And something you said, I really want to make a very specific point. Part of the branch, we have our annual training allotment. every PSAP based on your annual call load, we've created a funding model to support training, which includes attendance to professional associations like CalNINA and APCO, the conferences they support, and then local training. When I started here in 2018, that fund, every PSAP was given $3,000. And even in 2018 dollars, $3,000 did not get you much, especially if you had to fly somebody. So we've evolved that to where the smallest PSAP gets $10,000 a year. The largest PSAP gets $25,000 a year for training that we pay for. And we've also expanded the types of training that we approve for that reimbursement. And what we've done is we've partnered with Post. Post has the different post plan reimbursements. Plan 1, 2, 3, and 4, I think, are the four popular ones. What we've said is if an instructor is training something dispatch specific, certified as a Post NA, not applicable, which means Post will not give any reimbursement, we will authorize the use of our annual training allotment money for the dispatch center to attend that. And that will provide the cost for the dispatcher to attend, the course registration, and if there's travel required, the travel to support that dispatcher getting there. We've seen a huge increase in that since we've really done some assertive education. Training is important, and we've recognized that, and the team has really brought that in, and they've done a lot of work. Again, we've got a very diverse team, so as they've joined, they have used their resources to help bring in other PSAPs who have had a positive training experience. If they've seen a good training course, they bring that course instructor in. We review the content. If it's dispatch operation specific, especially health and wellness on the mental health aspect of it, we want to get that course certified. We want to get dispatchers attending those. So that's another component that we're doing as a branch and have done for many years. And we really try to help educate. As a matter of fact, Dylan on the soundboard, he's our reimbursement coordinator. He's the guy who works with Janae Dabrowski when these training courses come in. They evaluate, is it appropriate for dispatchers to attend? And they get it certified, they get those notifications pushed out.
Paul, for the agencies that are strapped with dispatchers, they can't send them out to training. You know, it's almost like they put the city, county at risk because you're missing a dispatcher for 12 hours out of the day because they have to attend training. I don't think, in my opinion, the reimbursement is the issue. The issue is getting the dispatchers training. So has the state considered looking at those agencies who have not used any reimbursements to see if there's a way that we can educate them or at least get the staffing study out to them? Because at some point, there's agencies who aren't using it completely. And I think that opens up the doors to educate them if they're not using a reimbursement or have the ability to send dispatchers out for training because of staffing.
Yeah. So I think that's where we leverage our relationship with Post. Post has oversight on the, I think it's every 2 years, there's a certain number of continued professional training hours that are required. So we continue to leverage that relationship with Post to help educate the PSAPs, what is available. And I know Jamila, who's the current dispatch, the manager over that dispatch program, we talk on a regular basis. And, you know, she knows our team and how to share information about training.
Well, do the available funds count for any personnel costs, direct personnel costs like backfill, or is it just for hard costs like books, tuitions, travel, et cetera?
It'll cover the dispatcher traveling, but we don't cover the backfill.
Can we change that?
I'll have to take that as an action item, Chief. I believe it was discussed previously, but let me confirm my facts. But yes, I'll get you an answer on if we can change that.
Yeah, I don't mean to throw you, put you on the spot, but we've talked a lot about, dispatcher wellness and all these different things. We commissioned the study, but I think the responsibility as a board is to kind of take that and figure out. And I think what we're hearing all the way around is like, now what, so what? Like, what as a board can we do? And, I think thinking outside the box, that when I say it was the last meeting, several meetings, they've had discussions how, historically CETA typically couldn't be used for anything to do with radio. Now I think we're spending, tens of millions towards radio stuff with the theory that it's the extension of the 911 call. I would certainly like to see that we think just as creatively for programs to help with the dispatchers. And maybe some of it isn't just money to attend, but maybe it's backfill thing. I think part of it is education. And I think it's been mentioned, you guys have done a great job of expanding that, putting more classes in there. But I would submit to you that I think there's still many places that may not even be aware of it or how to access. And so I like the idea the sheriff brought up about going. I think take this on a roadshow, go to Cal Chiefs, go to Cal Sheriffs, have a session explaining here's the findings. And then, hey, here's some things you might think about as a department. And then also too, from the state's perspective is like, here's how we can help you. Here's what we're doing to address that. I would also say that as we go forward, we're implementing, one of the biggest, most complex projects in the history of 911 in California. That's in the context of everything that came out of the survey. So I think we need to take this and internalize it from, hey, we're going to roll out change in this environment. And what are we doing to mitigate this? And I know we've talked a few times, there has been mention of, some financial support for, extra staffing when the stuff's being rolled out. But, there's definitely some concerning stuff. I would also say too, that there has been successes. For example, the Supervisory Leadership Institute, which is, I think, one of the most popular advanced leadership courses in California for first line sergeants, has been expanded years back to dispatch supervisors. And so I think getting that word out there and figuring out how we can make that happen, understanding that there's staffing situations. And then I would just say finally is, as we sort of plot ahead, and I know we have the long range planning committee and so forth, is that we take all this information here and make sure we're aligning our investments, not only in the technology side, but in supporting the people side, that's consistent with the findings of this survey. Because I think there's some things in there that we can, move the needle on.
I think, Chief, and to all of the members, I think we hear you loud and clear that we don't want this to be yet another governmental assessment that just, gathers dust. But I think we probably need a multi-pronged approach. I think it is us talking to the folks, the Cal Chiefs, the CSA, all of those folks. I agree. It's not just money, right? That it's actually like if we had a magic wand, we would broaden the bench of individuals that join the forces of men and women that work in these dispatch centers. And so I think that there's a shared interest across the state that we talk a little more about that. So we will go back and think about how Cal OES as a broader organization can amplify that message. So it's not just a report that's embedded here in the 911 branch. That might be kind of the engagement of the comms team. It might be engagement kind of more broadly, but we'll tee it up as a broader policy discussion and we can update you at future meetings.
All right, any other discussion related to the staffing study? All right. Is there a motion to accept the staffing study as drafted as the final product and be available to distribute throughout the professional associations in all of the PSAPs in California?
I'll make the motion, but do we need public comment or?
Yes, we should entertain any public comment.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
I'll table my motion until we're done with that.
Okay. Any comments from the public on the staffing study?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Logan, and I'm here with Heartland Communications. And I did want to talk a little bit about the staffing study, and more importantly, some thoughts for just the 911 advisory board here as well. As you enter into dealing with this, I think one of the fears that we have as 911 professionals is that we're going to have this agenda topic at this meeting, and then it's going to fall off the agenda and we have no more discussion about it. And I think that there's a history of that, and we don't want that to happen. You know, we are requesting that this be made a priority, and the 911 advisory board take the responsibility for some of the things that are in the bylaws. Is, you know, this board's responsibility is to promote communications between PSAPs and the state 911 office. And that includes policies, procedures, practices, technical operational standards, training standards for county coordinators and PSAP managers, budget funding, proposed projects and studies. And this is a time for action. You know, instead of having recommendations of, you know, let's do a roadshow and let's do information. Like if there's policy and procedures and minimum training requirements that should be assessed to PSAPs, because the messaging is loud and clear in there of where there's gaps and where there's lacks. And I think there's an opportunity for this board to take action. And, you know, if it's another subcommittee that needs to be established, if it's punting it to the long range planning committee, whatever it is, I just hope that it isn't a fall off of just this one meeting, this one day, and then we forget about it. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment?
All right.
We have one more.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. I'm sorry. I missed you.
Yeah, it,
I'm Casey Young from Stanislaus Regional 911. And I think I just have a couple comments. Sheriff, you made a comment about dispatch sometimes forgotten, and I think that's true. I think something important to keep in mind, not only do we need education and support, but we need a mindset shift from you as the executives and how we view our dispatchers. Many of us are working in facilities that are kind of off to the side or forgotten. I was talking with my associate back here who's their facilities kind of piecemealed together. So what happens, I think, is that dispatchers are often viewed as we provide a service versus being part of the team, the public safety team. We are your quarterbacks in your football game. We field the calls and we send them to you as the receivers so that we all can make the plays and you guys can have the win. So your idea of going around on this roadshow, I like it because we need you guys to really change the mindset and view us as part of the team. That's all I have to say.
all right. Thank you. One more public comment.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Hi, I'm Anna Trindad with Stockton Fire. I just want to echo what they said, but then also add in, Paul, you referenced coordinating with Post a lot for the education. I just want to make sure those secondary PSAPs don't have a tie to Post are not forgotten as well, because the message is just as important to get across to them as the primaries.
Absolutely. Okay, no other public comment. Chief White, I believe you were making a motion.
Yeah, motion to accept the study.
Is there a second?
Can I just maybe add a friendly amendment based on a public comment of accepting, because the motion is to accept this report. But I would also like to make sure we follow through with sharing that report. So could we have a motion that would involve, yes, disseminating this, but also having the feedback to us regarding your efforts in going out and talking to those associations and the educational piece? It could probably be summarized with less words, but.
I'll substitute my motion to accept the report and to conduct the outreach consistent with the feedback from the board that we discussed, and also to the follow-up from the branch to come back specifically regarding the funding and some of the other things that we talked about.
Okay, I'm going to take that note. Would it be appropriate as we move forward, we have this as a topic in the branch update, or do you want a separate agenda item specific to the staffing study? Okay. We'll add it to our branch update moving forward. All right. We'll conduct a roll call vote. Yes. Yeah, Sheriff
I'll be
Johnson.
the second.
Do we have CHP Commissioner Ellison, are you online for the roll call vote? Dispatch Manager Wallace?
Approve.
Chief White?
Approve.
Sheriff Sanchez?
Approve.
Sheriff Johnson?
Approve.
Deputy Director Sidney?
Approve.
IT Analyst Chase?
Approve.
Chief Huff?
Approve.
Chief Ramirez?
Approve.
Unanimous vote to accept the staffing study. And then we will take that as, we'll add that to our branch update as well moving forward.
Thank you. With that, we'll move to the legislative update, please.
Hi, good afternoon. Just checking that you all can hear me. This is Paul McGinnis.
Good copy.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Paul McGinnis, Ledge Coordinator here at Cal OES. In the interest of time, I will briefly run through a few key upcoming legislative dates, as well as bills that we are tracking that may be relevant or of interest to the board. A couple key dates. So the deadline to introduce bills for the legislature is this Friday, February 21st. May 2nd then is the last day for policy committees to meet and report fiscal bills in the first house. May 23rd is the last day for fiscal committees to meet in the first house, and then June 6th is the last day for the first house to pass bills to the opposite house. I'm now going to run through just a few bills that we are tracking that may be of interest to the board. One disclaimer is that a couple of these bills are spot bills, which means that they are non-substantive at this time, but they'll take on more details in the near future. And I will also make the list available to the board and the rest of the larger group following the meeting. So first bill is AB 330. This is an amendment to the Local Prepaid Mobile Telephony Services Collection Act. It would extend the sunset for the surcharge from 2026 to 2031. This bill, authored by Assemblymember Rogers, is in the Revenue and Tax Committee currently. Next bill we're tracking is AB 470. This one would state the intent of the legislature to enact legislation relating to telecommunications. This one's a spot bill by Assemblymember McKinner. We'll continue to keep our eye on this one. It's eligible to be heard March 5th. Next is AB 645. This one would state the intent of the legislature to enact to require emergency dispatchers to be trained as emergency medical dispatchers. This one is authored by Assemblymember Carrillo, and it is eligible to be heard in committee on March 16th. Just a couple more here. AB 654, Assemblymember Caloza would authorize a local public agency to establish a homelessness resource telephone system to receive calls regarding individuals who are experiencing or at the risk of experiencing homelessness in order to provide those individuals with resources. Again, this one's eligible to be heard in committee on March 16th. Just a couple more. AB 693, Assemblymember Warner. Among other things, this bill would establish the Department of Broadband and Digital Equity in the Government Operations Agency for the purpose of promoting ubiquitous and universal broadband deployment in underserved areas of the state and to increase broadband adoption throughout the state. This one's eligible to be heard on March 17th in committee. And the last state bill here that I want to share with the board, excuse me, is AB 705, another Assembly Member Horner bill. This one makes non-substantive changes to current law, which requires PUC's hearings, investigations, and proceedings be governed in part by the Commission's rules of practice and procedure, eligible to be heard on March 17th. There is one federal bill that I did want to share with the group as well. S-290 by Representative Barrasso would direct the Secretary of the Interior to upgrade existing emergency communication centers and units of the National Park System to next-gen 911 systems and for other purposes. This one's in the Committee on Emergency and Natural Resources. So that completes the ledge update at this time. As I stated, we will share this list with the group. And then as always, if you have additional comments related to these bills or any other items, please reach out to legislative.affairs@caloes.ca.gov. So pending any questions, that'll be it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGinnis. Before I open it up for any questions from the board, I just want to overlay over Paul's update to kind of talk a little bit about the process. So in the state agency, Paul is in our legislative branch for headquarters that oversees kind of legislation across all of the different programs. Depending upon how far in the process these bills get, we end up doing an analysis of these bills. If there are things that you think are important that you want us to take into consideration, please don't be shy about letting us know. Because when we do our bill analyses, we don't only want to kind of take into account what the state implications could be, but to make sure that we understand the consequences at the local level. Okay. And that's how we can kind of best support kind of the network of law changes and legislative. For those bills that secure the votes and go through both houses and go through the process, they make the bills that make their way to the governor's desk. We are also asked to provide a recommendation on whether the governor supports the bill in the final hours in making that decision. So what we always strive to do is make sure that we're providing the most information, accurate information that gives decision makers a sense of the impacts of any law changes. That also includes any discussions that we might have with legislative staff and the members who are staffing those bills. So that's kind of my general comment that I always make when we kind of go through a list of bills. It can feel like a bit of an accounting exercise when we just run through a list, but I think it's important to understand kind of the ecosystem and how we can work together on these. And with that, I'll open it up if there's any questions or comments from members.
I'll just make one comment. The bill that was brought up, AB 645, we've been unaware of it so far, but the language right now is very vague. And it's basically recommending that all dispatchers in the state be trained as emergency medical dispatchers. And we'll certainly at CalNINA, we have a lobbyist and we'll reach out to the author's office. But practically speaking, that makes no sense. The amount of money that would be spent in training dispatchers, especially police dispatchers that don't do fire or medical, it would just be a complete waste of time. It would be certifications that are required to be kept up. There's ongoing call review that's required. And if a police dispatcher is never taking a medical dispatch call, and just looking at the language, it's pretty baffling. So we'll follow up with the author's office, but from, our point of view, that bill doesn't make any sense as it's currently written.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions about other legislation? All right, with that, I'll open it up for public comment. All right, seeing none, we can move on to the next agenda item, which is the Long Range Planning Committee report.
It's Mr. Jeff Logan. I believe that you were going to present for the Long Range Planning Committee. Okay.
Okay, hello again. Again, my name is Jeff Logan. I'm with Heartland Communications, but in this capacity, I am representing the Long Range Planning Committee and California Fire Chiefs Association. So I'm going to give a couple of updates of how our meeting was yesterday and a couple of projects that we're on, and then I'm going to turn it over to the chair of our board, Alicia. She's got a couple of comments as well too. So one of the main projects we've been working on, and I know I've done a couple of briefing updates here, is working on what we call a one-page or informational document on policy-based routing. So as all of the PSAPs will be making their transition to next generation 911, one of the scary topics or discussion points has been policy-based routing and how do we change from what we have currently. So this group has taken on the project of simplifying it, making it easy, make easy decision points for those PSAP managers and directors who are having to make those choices. So over the past few months, we've completed that document. We presented it to OES, and we anticipate at our next meeting next quarter, the 911 office will give us some feedback. Just make sure that from a technical standpoint, we're correct and there's no missteps on there. And then we'll be able to push it forward here to the 911 Advisory Board for review and approval. But as a side note with that, in our meeting yesterday, what we talked about is because the next generation deployment timeline has been so pressing, we have fast tracked and really been pushing to get this out to PSAP managers. But if there is not going to be so much of a pressure of like by this December, being in place with it, and we may slow roll that project just a little bit because we don't want to get it out also too early to where people forget about it afterwards and there could be changes to it. So just more information coming on it, but the team has really been working hard and fast on that project. We received a request from the advisory board to work on some topics for regional consolidation and what that looks like in PSAPs. And so we had requested back in the summer for additional input from the 911 advisory board of what exactly, the request is of us to work on. And during the last meeting in November, there was an agenda topic on there for talking about virtual consolidation efforts that are currently in place within the state. And that topic got pushed out due to the agenda topics that were in place, and it wasn't added to this meeting. So we'll be looking forward to get that brought back. So it'll help give us better direction of where we're looking to go on that. We've got, we've been working on job description templates. So one of the projects we've taken on is, I'm sure everyone here is aware, but there's an effort to support the nationwide push for all of our 911 professionals to be recognized as first responders for the work that we do. And one of the requests that has come through is for all of the states and all of the PSAPs to work on updating job descriptions to match what the job is that we do currently. We in the PSAPs have been kind of our own worst enemy in a way of that these job descriptions haven't been updated in years, decades, and it's the same job description, even though our jobs have changed 10 times over. So what we're working on the advisory board, or I'm sorry, with the LRPC is we have a couple of staff members that are reaching out to get completed job descriptions that have been updated, that have went through city processes, passed through labor organizations so that we can start developing a repository that agencies can go to look at samples. And then eventually also work on templates that can be grabbed off the shelf and used for those agencies to make these updates. One of the other projects we're working on is remote call taking in PSAPs. And this is a request from the 911 advisory board of looking at best practices and what options are out there with technology that we can create for 911 centers if they wanted to have call takers or some positions work remotely. So that is in the early stages with our team working on and coming up with documentation. So we don't have anything to report yet, but it is something that we're working on together. And there were no regional task force meetings in the last quarter that we had, so no report on there. And I think with that, that's the end of my update. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I'll turn over to Alicia first.
Of course. Thank you, Jeff. Alicia Fuller with the California Highway Patrol, but representing the Long Range Planning Committee at this moment. I would like to just add that a number of the items that Jeff updated us on today are items that have been pushed along for a little bit of time due to changes that have taken place with Cal OES and discussion topics that the advisory board needed to take on. Today, we came back to one of those topics with the staffing study. And I am really glad to hear that none of us want that study to be placed on a shelf and forgotten about. It's imperative that the money and the time that was spent and the energy that was spent on that study be taken into consideration and moved forward to actionable items in the future. So I just want to remind and encourage the advisory board that the Long Range Planning Committee is here to support you and do the necessary work that needs to be done through your conversations and your decisions here as a board. And this is an iterative process. So we are here to ensure that these topics keep moving forward, stay on the agenda for discussion. And yes, these meetings become very long as a result of it, but it's all necessary so that we can ensure that our dispatch professionals get the assistance that they need and that we have direction on the Long Range Planning Committee as to the next steps that you would like us to take and where you want us to take these actions and projects in the future. And that's all.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the members? All right, any public comments?
All right. Thank you so much for the time today. And just as a reminder, we're here to help. So if you guys need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us on the LRPC. Thanks.
Will do, thank you. So we'll move on to the next agenda item. Mr. Truxell will provide us an update on 988, please.
Yes, there's been some leadership changes on the 988 side of the 911 branch. The 988 Systems Director role is now with me. And recently, what I've done with our 988 project team is I've been meeting with the 988 centers. We have 12 centers throughout the state, 8 locally, or excuse me, 7 locally in the Bay Area, and then D.D. Hirsch is our largest one down in Los Angeles. I've met with all of the Bay Area centers. I've met with D.D. Hirsch about 2 weeks ago, and we're scheduling meetings with the remaining 4. And I'm trying to put an emphasis on the importance of 988, the importance of rolling out the state's 988 call answering platform, which has been supplied by NGA. And I'm very happy to say every center in the state, all 12 centers, has the technology deployed. NGA's gotten the backroom equipment installed. They have at least one position installed. And what we're working on with the 988 centers currently is to integrate some of their local lines so they can start testing and training that platform as we continue the deployment for whatever workstations each center needs. Center to center, their needs vary quite a bit, like our PSAPs. And in that pilot project, I've also been able to work with the director and chief deputy director to review the MOU between the state of California and SAMHSA from the federal level that will deliver 988 calls to the state's platform. That MOU has been signed, it's been sent to SAMHSA. I've been in contact with them and we're working on regular meetings, and they're going to work with the federal platform, which is Vibrant, that delivers 988 calls federally. They're going to be delivering 988 calls to the state of California. That timeline is still being developed. And then tomorrow afternoon, I'm meeting with the NGA team to go through the specifics of this plan and how we support the 988 centers immediately. And then long-term, what is our long-term strategy? And with that, we also meet with our partners at the Department of Health and Human Services and Department of Healthcare Services to make sure our state partners are involved in our plan. We also have a role in the 5-year plan developed by DHHS and DHCS. So there's a lot of great communication going on, a lot of traction in this project, and we're getting a lot of really good support from the centers and some good successes coming out of 988. So I'm very proud of the team and very proud of our update. Pause for any questions. Right. Any questions from the public? Okay. The next agenda item is agenda items for future meetings. And then the future meeting dates are posted on this slide for May, August, and November. Are there any board members have any agenda topics that they would like to add to the future agenda?
Just I heard that we're already putting on the agenda item regarding consolidation and virtual consolidation.
Yes, I have that note.
Great, thank you.
Okay. And then the next agenda topic is public comment. Any members from the public who wish to make comment? Okay, no public comment. The next item is adjourn. And do we have a motion to adjourn the 911 Advisory Board meeting?
Paul, can I make one more comment? It appears that the link that was on the webpage for the meeting today, people were having trouble accessing the meeting online. So can we please make it an action item for your staff that for the next round of meetings that it gets tested thoroughly the day before? I know that there was some emails going around and we were able to email, people who were trying to access the meeting, but it is very important that for public access to be able to have access to that link.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
I've got that, Dylan. We'll talk about it after the meeting. Yep, we'll come up with a plan to test it.
I move to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn.
I'll second. I'll second it, but I also wanted to just thank the Chief Deputy Director and also to the Director of OES who stayed here this whole time for your involvement and attention to this board and getting things on track. So appreciate your time. I know you have many other responsibilities. With that, my motion to adjourn or second.
Okay, we have a second. Meeting's adjourned.